Today's decision is a win for Canadians and for future generations. It cannot be free to pollute in Canada. This decision confirms that putting a price on carbon pollution and returning the revenues to Canadians through the Climate Action Incentive Rebate is not only constitutional, it is an effective and essential part of any serious response to the global challenge of climate change. The court also recognized, as do most Canadians, that climate change is man-made and one of the great existential issues of our time. We are witnessing Canadians across the country hurting from the impacts of climate change. It is time for Conservative politicians to stop the partisan games and join in on serious and effective climate action. My questions to Conservative politicians, from Doug Ford to Scott Moe to Jason Kenney to Andrew Scheer: will you stop blocking climate action and join us in fighting climate change?
Our fight will continue on behalf of the vast majority of Saskatchewan people who oppose the ineffective, job-killing Trudeau carbon tax. I want to thank all of the organizations and the provinces that intervened on Saskatchewan's side. I want to thank Sask Power and Sask Energy. I want to thank the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, the International Emissions Trading Association. And I want to thank Premier Doug Ford and the Government of Ontario, Premier Blaine Higgs and the Government of New Brunswick, and Premier Jason Kenney and the Government of Alberta, who intervened when they were the official opposition. And I also want to thank Saskatchewan Justice, and in particular, our two outstanding constitutional lawyers who presented Saskatchewan's case. Despite today's ruling, I believe that Mitch McAdam and Alan Jacobson delivered a clear, a thorough, and a well-researched case on the constitutionality of a Trudeau carbon tax. And I'm confident that they will continue to deliver a strong argument on behalf of Saskatchewan in front of the Supreme Court of Canada. And I remain hopeful for a different outcome. I also want to thank all of our Saskatchewan small business owners, our farmers, our energy sector workers, and to each and every one of our hardworking Saskatchewan families, thank you for your support.
Well, what I am hoping today's decision, which was quite clear on a number of fronts, and I think it's really important to point out what the court found. Not only did it find that a price on pollution is constitutional, but it is an essential part of any credible plan to tackle the global challenge of climate change. It said that climate change is man-made, and is a great existential issue of our time. So I'm hoping that Conservative politicians, from Scott Moe to Doug Ford, to Jason Kenney to Andrew Scheer, will stop fighting pricing pollution, one of the great tools that we have, and start fighting climate change with us.
Is not enough. You hear them, they say they're going to keep fighting, they're going to take this to the Supreme Court and keep talking about it. So what do you say to them? How do you keep arguing and getting your message across?
I learned a lesson from what happened in the United States. We worked really hard to convince President Trump that we needed to, that it was very good and in the U.S.'s interest to stay in the Paris Agreement. But he made a decision otherwise, and so we worked with states, we worked with businesses, we worked with cities, and we worked with Americans committed to climate change. We're going to continue working with Canadians. We have a climate change plan that is Canada's climate change plan. It was made by Canadians for Canadians. But we will continue working in my province of Ontario, as we've been doing, working with cities. Cities and towns are on the front lines of climate change. They can't pretend it's not happening. They can't pretend that we can do less as opposed to more. I'm going to continue working with businesses, big and small. They can save money by being more energy efficient, and they can reinvest that money and they can create good jobs. With young people, with schools, with hospitals. We're going to continue doing exactly what we said we were going to do when we were elected. We said we were going to put a price on pollution. We said we were going to work with the world to tackle climate change. We said we were going to develop a climate change plan with all Canadians. We have that plan. We're going to continue moving forward because we don't have a choice. And just look at what's happening right now, the flooding that we're seeing, that we know. We have a report from scientists. Our scientists have shown that Canada's warming at twice the global average, 3 times or more in our north, that we are going to see the impacts, and we are seeing the impacts of climate change, and we have a choice. We have a choice about whether we're going to take ambitious climate action, whether we're going to work based on the science, whether we're going to make decisions for policy based on evidence like putting a price on pollution. And I think that's the choice Canadians want.
This is game 1. We were unsuccessful in game 1. We have game 2 in Ontario, we have game 3 in another province, game 4 in another province, likely game 5 ending in Alberta. And the fact of the matter is the end of this playoffs will ultimately be decided in game 7, which will be the Supreme Court of Canada. I have an answer to a question that was asked by the Federal Environment Minister just a few minutes ago with respect to asking premiers across this nation to stop blocking climate action. No one in this nation should confuse climate action with a carbon tax. The two are very, very separate. And let me answer that question to the Federal Environment Minister. In Saskatchewan, we have, always have, and continue to use and ensure that we use each and every tool in our toolbox to block yours and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's ineffective carbon tax on hardworking Saskatchewan families, while we in this province continue with our fight against climate change. Thank you.